All right, we're back, and this is a long-awaited video, and I've waited for this time to do this. This is our part one of how to wheelie. Now, I'm using the Grom, the Honda Grom, as an example for that for obvious reason. It's low power, and it's a relatively inexpensive bike, but we'll get to that. So, we're going to have a few different parts to this as far as part one, part two, part three, etc. And the first thing I want to share with you on how to wheelie a bike has nothing to do with you wheeling the bike, okay? Part one, or number one, is getting you ready for doing wheelies. All right, the first thing that you've got to do to be ready for wheelies is to, I'm not telling you what gear to wear, but you have to get yourself geared up. And this is going to be a do as I say, not as I do type of thing. And the reason why I say that is, you see I'm in short sleeves. It's rather hot out here, and I'm not doing anything right now, but I'm going to talk about that. The basics are going to be, when you're going to be doing wheelies or attempting wheelies, is you're going to need a helmet. Anytime that you're on a bike, you need to be wearing a helmet. I got gloves on and I've got shoes on. I would recommend, again, this is not do as I say, not as I do, but having some armor would be one thing. Having elbow pads. A lot of times, like the motocross undersuit has everything like a mesh suit where it has spine protection, elbow protection, even a roost guard. And, like I said, gloves. You can choose to have some sort of armored pants or some over armor, like a knee pads or something like that, or a knee brace. And then you got to be careful with your boots. So a lot of stunners like to use skate shoes that go over their ankle. On a Grom, you're going to be going relatively slow if you're going to have an incident, but the faster that you're going, the faster your bike is that you're going to be doing this on, which I don't recommend being in a fast bike. The risk and the amount of kinetic energy that's going to dump on you if you have an issue is going to go up. So getting yourself ready, number one. Get yourself geared up. The gloves, I choose kind of a minimal thing on this, because a big thing on this, especially as you get more advanced than what I am, you're going to need dexterity. And the more experienced you are, the better that you can deal with the lack of dexterity. But I digress. So part number two, getting your bike ready. All right, or number two, getting your bike ready. Number two is going to be looking at your bike and see if it's sound. Are your tires good? Are they bald? Are they not? Are the fluids, all those things, is it good in mechanical condition? That's a baseline thing. And we'll get a little bit more advanced by this if you're going to be doing a lot of wheelies. And I'm just going to touch on this right now, is going to be your rear brake line. Some bikes have just drum brakes, and that's a different deal. You're just having to deal with a cable, but you want to make sure that your brakes are in good working order. The more advanced you get and the more you're going to be using your brake, the more of an issue it becomes of heating up that brake fluid. The more that you use them, it's going to heat up the brake fluid. If you're on a standard rubber line, those are going to give, and they're going to expand and eventually possibly even fail. So having a braided steel brake line is going to be an important thing. And obviously the status of your brake pads. You're going to make sure that the rotor and all those things are in good working order. Okay, that spiel out of the way. On a Grom, you can damage a Grom relatively easy. Some of you that have done this before, you'll know that, I'm not showing it very well here, this has got aftermarket rear sets on them, and they're actually crash protection on top of that with, let's see, these are the MKS system, along with this, a lot of people call them like a tail, or like a 12 bar or something, but it's really a cage. It's a cage for the rear here. And there's a certain amount of, this bike has already been looped before it had this on here, so it's scarred up and beat up back here. But a rear cage, and when you do start doing tricks, that's going to become a more important issue. Okay, having something like this back here, and it also offers crash protection. That's the main thing that we're talking about. If I tip this bike over, nothing's going to happen to it. Okay, I got to stand it back up now, but it's got this Delarin type material on it, and your bars are going to be an issue on here. But having your bike ready to crash and recover from a crash is going to be an important thing. Okay, and this is Grom specific, and you might be aware of this on whatever bike you're doing this on. On the SF and OG Grom, this one's an 18 model. The subframe is a part of the frame. It's steel tube. An advanced thing to do on this is to take and reinforce that tubing by driving a smaller tube inside of it. That's a Grom specific deal. So think about that in the future and reinforce your bike. Get your bike ready to be resilient against crashes. We don't want crashes to happen, but when you're learning, stuff might just happen. Okay, that leads us to part 3. This is where you start doing something. And I'm going to warn you ahead of time, this is going to be where the work happens. A lot of people want to learn wheelies and learn them fast. There's the fast way, and it's not necessarily the best way. A lot of you are going to probably try to rush this part, but I'm a person that works out and stuff, and training for what you're going to do is going to be important. And that's where I don't skip this step, okay? And this is how I learned. This is number 3, rear brake control. Rear brake is the fundamental thing that saves you from eating it when you're doing wheelies. As you start getting this bike farther and farther back, you go from being in the point of chasing, taking more and more power, to you staying harder and harder into the throttle, and then it gets to a certain point where it's at that elusive thing called balance point. On these, it's about when the forks are about level to the ground, okay? Or maybe a little bit under. And I've got a plane flying over me. Looks like a crop duster. And that's probably messing up my audio. But at a certain point, you're going to have less and less throttle that's going to have to take to get you to that balance point. Sometimes giving a little bit of gas to maintain is going to be an important thing, but you're going to need something to save you, and that is your rear brake. And one of the things is, you always see in these how to wheelie videos, it's, you got to cover the rear brake. We're covering the rear brake. Covering the rear brake is one thing, but knowing how to use it instinctively is what this part is about. So using the brake, covering the rear brake, and using it are two different things. And if you want to really learn how to wheelie, you got to be able to touch that rear brake and know what that feels like to save you, okay? So this is not in a situation where you're just going to learn this like real fast. You're going to do a montage like on Rocky, and then all of a sudden you're ready to fight the Russian and win. That dates how old I am. But what I'm going to say is, if you do what I'm going to tell you to do, this will be a stage in your quest to learn how to wheelie. So stay with me and learn this. If you got a garage or you don't have a garage, get to a place where you can, at the end of your routine for the day, before you take off your shoes, the key doesn't have to be in the bike or anything. You get somewhere where you're going to practice on the bike. And practicing means you're not doing this in the lot. You're not doing this wherever it is that you're going to be doing this at. And we'll get to that point. It's going to be getting your reps in, okay? So we're going to pump up your memory muscles for that right foot, okay? And that's where this goes. For a week solid, 7 days, I want you to get, if you're going to follow the method which I did, 50 to 100 reps, and I'd prefer you have 100 reps, and you can count them, and it can be more than that, of pressing the rear brake lever on your right-hand side and get a good position on it. We're not talking out, when you're doing wheelies, your foot isn't going to be out here in la-la land, okay? It's going to be like all the people that just say, well, cover the rear brake. It's going to be touching the rear brake, and you're going to be in a position here. See how I'm rolling the bike forward and back? And I'm just going to continually roll the bike forward and back, and I'm going to push that rear brake. I'm going to get all my reps like this. We'll just count that as 1. And what I'm doing, see how it slows down as I'm pulling forward? I'm feeling that engagement point. A lot of times when you touch the rear brake, just touching it, there's going to be a little bit of slack in there before it actually starts engaging. When we're going to be doing and are practicing on wheelies, there's going to be a time to touch the rear brake firmly, and there's going to be times where you just need to feather it, because giving it too much brake, and if you did the dreaded chop the throttle all the way off, you're going to do what's called a mouse trap, and we don't want that to happen. So rear brake control, learning rear brake control is going to be this drill. So you're going to be going forward, and you're pushing it forward, and you're going back, and you're just feathering that rear brake, learning that engagement point. And you're going to try to be as much as you can. You're not going to be looking to your right like I am. I want to illustrate that. You see how I'm working this? And some of your reps can be just sitting here working that rear brake. And you might need to take a break a little bit, pun intended, and reflect, and then get back and do a few more. That's fine. But what you got to do is just go along and going back and forth and get your reps in. Let's say 50 to 100. I'd rather have 100 every day. And you're pushing that rear brake, and you're feeling, you see how the bike is kind of slowing? I can still push through it. Feel the feel. Generate a rear brake feel point for the next step that we're going to be talking about. Because if you don't have this, you have no business making attempts. You might be doing pow-pows, or you might be doing the next step or two, and you're getting lucky because you don't get past that balance point and have to save yourself. And a lot of times when you're pow-powing it up, you're going faster and faster and faster and faster until you run out of luck, and you end up missing chunks of your body or being injured and having a messed up bike. We don't want that to happen, okay? So get your 7 days of reps here. And I thought about initially all right, get your 7 days in there, and if it might take more for you to understand that and get it, I was going to include this on the original getting your bike ready. This is going to be part 4 here, and it's going to be the clutch up, okay, engaging the clutch. But what I like, and what is really makes it, for me, some people are just different, easier, I like having a 1-finger clutch lever. This is a Righteous Stunt Metal, or RSC clutch lever, Righteous Stunt Metal, or RSC clutch lever. And this one is a hook or a trigger series. It's a trigger series. And if you're not going to be doing this, ignore this piece right here. This is a handbrake. This is an advanced piece. If you're just going to be using your foot brake only to save you, this is how this one came, but I like the Bone series where it's just a straight bar, but this one works for me. But having the ability to be able to pull in the clutch and release it while also hanging on to the bar is an important tool to use, because if you have your normal size lever, what you have to do is kind of tricky, and you're not really necessarily holding on to the bar. So I think this is a 1 finger, or a 2 finger might be a way to go with on this. And if you get a 2 finger and it sticks out here too far, you can move your bar over here. But we're going to talk about the clutch up, okay? Now that we've understand rear brake is going to save us, time to do some more practicing. And this is going to take some time. You got to be willing to develop the feel on this. And I'm sorry if you wanted a video that was going to show you, a bunch of people doing awesome wheelies and look cool. This is not the video for you. I'm sorry. But what we're going to do, I've seen people teach the method of being at a static point or staying still, have your foot down, on your left foot down, like what we were practicing earlier, and then clutching up. I do not like that method. I don't teach that method. I don't really teach anybody in the first place. But what I do teach, or what I do suggest, is reaching a cruising speed, pulling in the clutch, stabbing the rear brake while the clutch is still engaged. You don't know if you can see it, but my clutch is pulled in and my rear brake is touched. And somewhere in between there, I'm revving the engine with the clutch depressed. And after I've released the rear brake, which that loads the suspension. That loads the suspension as I'm cruising forward. And then I'm raising the RPMs and I'm dumping the clutch, okay? And then as soon as I release that rear brake, I'm in the gas, however much that I have to be. It's going to take a while to develop this feel. So let me see if I can display that. I don't have so I'm going to do this a little bit unnaturally. So we're visualizing here. I'm cruising along. I'm in first gear. Grom, you just about have to first gear when you're learning this stuff because they have no power. I'm cruising along. I reach my cruising speed, which is slow. And I pull in my clutch. I'm starting to raise my RPMs. I stab my rear brake. And then I release the clutch. And it's popping the front end up. I'm going to do a few reps of that now. And this is where, my editing is going to come in. But this is just for demonstration purposes here. So just bear with me. I'm going to do a couple reps here just to show you what I'm talking about. And I'm going to try to keep. And all we're really doing here, is, you notice how frame, I'm going to do it coming back even though you don't see my rear brake. I'm just going back and forth here, lifting it up. Sometimes what's going to happen, it's going to drag, when I stab that rear brake, it's going to drag the rear tire. It's going to skid loose a little bit. And so what we're wanting to do, this is going to be an exciting time. See how it came down quickly? I was still on the gas. The Grom does not have a lot of power. But we've got to know what it feels like for that front end coming up a little bit. And this is fun. You're coming up and you're using your rear brake control while you're still on the throttle, and you're bringing that front wheel down. What I don't want you to do is when it comes up, to take your rear brake, your foot off your rear brake, because that is a big boo-boo. You can always save yourself. Like, that's a much higher point where you're used to it coming up. Bringing the rear, bringing that down with the rear brake. And there's going to be times where it's going to do weird things. You're going to it's going to pull one way or the other. Okay? So that's something that you're going to take. It's going to take a lot of time for you to develop a feel. And that's fine. Some people are more naturals at this. Some people have a motocross background. Some people have a background of riding where a lot of this comes rather easily. And this is just a matter of putting that tool in your toolbox. Pardon the train, I'm over by the tracks. And I skipped past something here, but you're going to have an appropriate place. You're going to have an appropriate place to be able to practice this. I'm around some houses over here, and you might be able to see back here, this is a pool. This is late September. People aren't using this. I'm not bothering anybody. And I'm also, on my Grom, I have a stock exhaust. I'm not making a bunch of noise. I'm not aggravating people. But if someone doesn't want you there, they'll let you know. And yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. It's better to be in a place where you have permission. But I'm really not doing anything bad out here, and this is public property. So if there's some people that don't like it, and if I was over here with an exhaust, a really loud exhaust bike, well, I'd be bothering people out here. I don't want to do that. That's why a lot of people go to a place like, a lot of people use some of these warehouses that have been developed. Get with your local community and find yourself a place where you can practice. Another part here is going to be you're going to look at, so that would be like number 5, but we're just going to blend that into there. But on number 5, as you're starting to get some reps in here, is an opportunity for you to get some bad habits. A lot of people that have been exploring and even playing roulette, so to say, with power wheelies on like really, higher expense or more expensive, higher dollar, more expensive, higher power bikes, that front end's coming up, and a lot of people, they're in a tuck, or they've got their body position is way forward. That's not especially for a Grom, isn't something to do, or even on any bike. When you're way forward, you're going to have a lower, a harder time getting up to that balance point. And that's given you, especially on a low power bike, a mechanical disadvantage that just puts you in a bad place. So let's talk about body position. Body position is going to be different for everybody, and based upon what your bike is like. On a bike like a Grom, especially if you're a person that, I'm about 225 pounds. So the more forward I am with my center, the more difficult it's going to be for this bike to go. But it's also going to mean the more, when I stab that rear brake, I'm going to get more squish out of that suspension. And when it comes back, that's one of the things about getting that timing. You do it less with power and more for the reaction of the suspension. So the big thing is going to be looking at body position, and this is where, something that you're going to want to do is you're going to make these attempts with a friend present to see, or get some video if you don't have any. It's important to do this stuff with a friend because injury is a possibility, and you want to have somebody that helps you. So you might have to have a truck, or you might have to have something to be able to get you to the location which you're going to do this. Okay. So that right there concludes part 1 of how to wheelie. So at this point, what you're going to want to do is get to this deal where you're practicing a lot of clutch ups and getting up a little bit and pulling it down with the rear brake. You do not want to go 0 throttle and give it a bunch of rear brake once, especially if you get to the point where you're scared. And the other thing, never, ever, 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 ever take your foot off of that rear brake unless or your right peg and your rear brake, because if you go back like this, bad stuff's going to happen. Whatever speed you're going to go, that's going to take you down, and you're going to get a face full of asphalt. We don't want that to happen. But if, let's just say, something really wild happens, this is why we took the precautions of getting our bike ready. You want to get yourself away from that bike so that it doesn't land on you. And I did this in slow motion because I didn't really want to slam my bike down. But you want to get it away from you, because these parts will stick you and you'll be missing meat. So that ends it for part one of how to wheelie. In this case, the Grom. But if you can wheelie a Grom, you can wheelie anything. Make sure and like and subscribe, comment and interact with me on this, and we'll see you next time.